In our Zoom session of this past week, we explored the differences between two very significant leaders in the Jewish people. Moses, of course, the servant of God, the greatest of the prophets, the man who brought the Jewish people out of the land of Egypt, led them through the wilderness for 40 years, receiving Torah on their behalf and teaching it to the people. And Moses' successor, the man who would replace Moses at Moses' death, Joshua. And this man, Joshua, would be charged by Moses and later by God with the responsibility for taking the Jewish people across the Jordan River, concluding their 40 years of exile in the wilderness, and bringing them in to conquer and to inherit the land of Canaan, which would become known as the land of Israel. This week, we are continuing our discussion of Joshua. We are looking at Joshua chapter 2, and it picks up immediately after God has charged the new leader with the responsibility for preparing his people to cross over the Jordan and to fulfill their destiny of inheriting the land of their ancestors. But before the Jewish people cross over, which we will come to in our third lesson, before that time, Joshua takes advantage of a ploy, a strategic idea of sending out scouts or spies, if you will, to go into the land prior to the entry of the people of Israel, prior to their crossing the river, sending out spies to determine what the people will meet when they cross the Jordan, what conditions they will face, and a general description of the land and the city of Jericho in particular that they are coming to conquer. Now, it's interesting to point out that the sending out of scouts or spies is a very rational military preparation. If one is going into a new area, an area that one has not been in either ever or for a very, very long period of time, especially if the object of that entry into the land is to conquer, to do battle, then it makes sense before one commits one's forces and one's people to the exploit, it makes sense to send over an advance team to reconnoiter the land, to spy it out, to see it, to determine its strong points, its cities, the number of its troops, the various obstacles that will face the people in their attempt to take possession of their new land. Just as Joshua does this in chapter 2, almost 40 years before that, Moses had resorted to the same ploy, had resorted to the same tactic when he had led the Jewish people to the boundaries of Israel and they were preparing to enter the land. Let me set for you the stage for that incident that occurs 40 years almost earlier. By the way, the account of Moses's sending in spies, scouts to spy out the land can be found, if you would like to do the reading, it can be found in the book of Numbers, and it can be found in Numbers from chapter 13:1 to 14:12. And there you can read the account of how Moses, 39 years before Joshua, does the very same thing that Joshua does, which is to send in scouts before the people are to enter to conquer the land. Now, why the difference of 39 years? You may say, if Moses had done this 39 years earlier, why was Joshua first doing this at this point? And the answer is because the scouts that Moses sent into the land, the mission he had given them, failed dramatically. It was a terrible calamity. What had happened? The Jewish people were about a year out from their exodus from Egypt. Just to review the history, they had left Egypt on the night of Passover, the 15th day of the month of Nisan. After a week, they had crossed the Red Sea. They spend a total of 50 days wandering from their departure point in Egypt till they come to Mount Sinai. At Mount Sinai, 50 days after the night of the Exodus, the Jewish people stand at the base of the mountain And there God appears at the top of the mountain, and he reveals to Moses and to all of the people at that time, he reveals his presence, and he issues the first of his commandments, what we call today, or we know as Aseret HaDibrot, the 10 Commandments. At that point, God enters into a covenant with his people. The Jewish people become God's people, a nation of priests, a holy nation. They commit themselves to follow God's law, whatever it may be, and Israel and God enter into a separate and unique kind of a covenant. What happens after that is the Jewish people remain at Mount Sinai for a period of about a year. The fact is that the Jewish people, after the moment at Sinai, they remain at Sinai throughout the period of the year where Moses continues to receive revelations from God. He continues to teach the people laws and statutes and judgments, all the laws that we find contained in the Torah. And then at the end of that year, at the end of that first year from the people's leaving Egypt, a year after they receive the Torah at Mount Sinai, God says to Moses and to the people, your time has come. You shall now go to the land which I promised to your ancestors, to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and you will enter the land and conquer it and take possession of it and settle it. So you see, it wasn't originally supposed to be 40 years that the Jewish people were to wait before they entered the land. They were supposed to enter the land about a year after they left Egypt, after they had become a nation in the wilderness, and after they had been taught God's Torah by Moses. What happens to this people? We are told that they march out, as Moses has told them, as God has commanded. They march out, and they come to the borders of the land of Canaan, the very same land that Joshua is now standing before. And prior to their going in and conquering the land, God tells Moses that he may send out scouts, he may send out spies to spy out the land, to see the land, to bring back fruits of the land, to survey and reconnoiter the land in order to bring back report to Moses and the Jewish people to show them that, in fact, the land is everything that God has promised. So Moses designates a leader from each of the tribes of Israel, 12 tribes, 12 Jewish leaders from each tribe. He designates 12 men and he commissions them as scouts. And their responsibility is to go into the land, to survey it, to go from the south all the way to the north, to pass through the entire land, to view it, to see it, and to come back and to report to Moses and to the Jewish people what it is they have seen. Indeed, they are even told that they are to bring back objects, fruits of the land, to show the people that it is truly a land flowing with milk and honey. The scouts, the 12 men, go out. They complete their mission. It takes them 40 days. They travel through the land from the south all the way to the north and then back again. And they return after 40 days to the camp of Israel, and they report their findings to Moses and the leaders in the presence of the people. And what do these messengers, these scouts, say? We have come to the land which you have appointed us to observe, and indeed the land which we have seen is a good land. It is a land flowing with milk and honey, and here are some of the produce from the land. Here are some of the fruits of the land. You can see that it is exactly as God commanded it. It is a good land. But after reporting that the land was good, as God had promised, 10 of the scouts, 10 of the 12 men who had been sent out, begin to say, despite the fact that the land is very good, despite the fact that it is everything that God has said, we have seen the people in this land. And these people are mighty, and they are well armed, and they are militarily prepared. Indeed, some of these men are of giant stature, and they live in fortified cities, cities that will be very hard for us to conquer. And as a result, we are telling you that when we came back, we felt that we would not be able, we were reporting to you that we do not know how we are going to conquer it. It is too strong a land for us. It is a land in which our armies will be defeated, we will be killed, and our wives and our children will become prey, will become booty for the enemy after they defeat us. And the spies proceed to describe what they have seen, and as they are describing the obstacles to conquering the land, the Jewish people who are there and hearing this are becoming more and more unsettled. And after the report, they begin to complain, they begin to grumble to Moses, and they say to Moses, "Why did you bring us out of the land of Egypt? If we're only going to die anyway in battle, wouldn't it have been better for us to have remained in Egypt as slaves and lived, rather than to die here and have our wives and children taken as captives?" And the people are so dissatisfied that they even propose appointing new leaders and going back to the land of Egypt, if you can imagine that. Faced with this rebellion, Moses and Aaron do not know what to do. And then two of the spies, two of the 12 men who have gone to see the land, come forward and they attempt to prevent the people from rebelling. These two men, interestingly enough, one is Joshua, who we see again now, 39 years later. Joshua was a leader of the tribe of Manasseh, or the representative from the tribe of Manasseh. And the other man was a man named Caleb, and he was the man that was chosen to spy out the land from the tribe of Judah. Joshua and Caleb attempt to intercede with the people to tell them, "Do not rebel, for we will surely inherit this land. God is with us, and therefore do not fear. We are destined to take this land. Now let us go forward and do what God wants us to do." Well, tragically, they are not able to convince the people. The people rebel against God. They refuse to go up. And finally, God, in his anger at the fact that this people still does not trust him, condemns this generation to wander in the wilderness for another 39 years until all of the men of a certain age have died out. And then God says, when that generation that had no faith dies out, I will bring their children, their families in. The very children who they thought would be prey, those children will inherit the land. And then the Jewish people begin their additional 39 years of wandering. We now come to the end of that period. Joshua is about to bring the people into the land. And once again, Joshua resorts to the device of sending in scouts or spies. That is what we are going to be reading about in chapter 2 and discussing this coming Tuesday evening at our Zoom session. I would like you to consider the following questions in preparation for our Tuesday chat room. Question 1. Is there any significance between the number of scouts sent by Moses, you'll remember I told you there were 12, and the number of scouts or spies sent by Joshua? And I leave it to you to read the chapter and find out how many spies Joshua sent. Is there a significance to the fact that there was a difference in the number of spies? Question 2. How do the missions of the two sets of scouts differ from one another? If you read carefully the account in Numbers chapter 13:1 to 14:12, you will see that the purpose for which the scouts are sent out differ in that text from the purpose for which the scouts were sent out in the book of Joshua. Question number 3. How does the report delivered by Joshua's scouts when they come back from scouting out the land, how does their report differ from the report that the 12 spies had given to Moses 39 years earlier? What was the difference between their two accounts? And finally, what important information did Joshua's scouts convey to Joshua about the land that suggested the eventual success of their mission? There was specific information that the scouts of Joshua brought back that helped the people in making the decision to go in with trust in God and that their mission would be successful. These are the questions we will confront in our discussion this coming week. I look forward to meeting with you all then. Thank you.